We have lots to discuss in today's video, including some off-season trade speculation. Tonight's teams we're focusing on in terms of off-season rumors, focusing on the Montreal Canadiens, the Vancouver Canucks, Boston Bruins, as well as the Philadelphia Flyers. We're going to update the wildcard race in both East and Western Conference, which certainly had some significant games played here today. Some more big signings as more players leaving college to turn pro. Also, we're going to take a look at Auston Matthews scoring at the lowest rate of his career. What is going on with the Leafs captain? Should we be concerned? Could it impact their playoff push? We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. It's been another very interesting day of NHL action. Lots of games today that are impacting the wildcard race in both the East and Western Conference. The St. Louis Blues, let's start with them. They continue to win again. This time a big win over the upstart Colorado Avalanche. The Avs have been really, really good lately, one of the league's top teams, and they pulled out another squeaker, 2-1 after a late goal in the third period, gave them the edge. This team just seems like, you know, to quote the Shorzy show, which I'm not sure if any of you watched that, but they just may never lose again. You get that feeling, like I said, with the Blues, I just keep getting these 2019 vibes, that not only are they going to get into the playoffs, but I would not want to play them. I think they're going to end up upsetting one of the higher ranked favored teams and maybe go on a deeper run than we could have all expected. But now they're caught up to Minnesota. They're just in a real good spot here. So teams like teams like Calgary and Vancouver trying to chase them down. They're going to be in tough. This is not going to be easy. Now, they do have more games played than the teams below them. So, like Calgary's playing Edmonton tonight, an absolute must-win. They have to take advantage of the games they have in hand and get points. Otherwise, it's going to be real tough. So, the Blues, they're not locked in by any means. Things can change. But right now, St. Louis, not only are they looking good to make the playoffs, but they might not even be wild card 2 anymore. They might even finish higher. So, be curious to see how they finish down the last, I think there were, 8 games to go, I believe. So, going to be fun to watch in the Eastern Conference. We had a game earlier, Tampa versus the New York Islanders. Looked early that Tampa was going to dominate and take it easily. The Islanders did make a game of it, though. They came back, made it close, a 5-3 win for Tampa. So the Islanders lose another critical game. They're still in the mix there, but not doing themselves any favors. And then we had what we'll call a 4-point game tonight between Ottawa and Columbus. Surprisingly, the schedule has been kind of weird and wonky this year in a few cases, and Ottawa and Columbus have not played each other all year. So for teams that you're going to expect to see like 3 to 4 times, how is it we can be this late in the season with 10, 11 games left and they haven't played? It's bizarre. So Ottawa and Columbus play tonight, and then early in April they have a home-and-home back-to-back. So like, they play 3 times in like a week and a half or something like that. But obviously going into tonight's game, it was a 6-point gap for Ottawa in Ottawa's favor. But if Columbus wins that game, they're 4 points back of Ottawa. If Ottawa wins, it's 8 points. So it's a huge 4-point swing there. So Ottawa did pull off a 3-2 victory. The Jackets made it interesting at the end, but Ottawa hangs on, which also does Montreal a favor. Montreal is idle tonight, but the loss by the Blue Jackets puts Montreal temporarily back into that wild card spot. The Rangers still play the Sharks tonight. The Rangers had a big game against the Ducks last night, and they had a lead and blew it. Lost in overtime, but still got a point. The Rangers have also played more games than the other guys here in this race. So, again, they have to keep getting points to stay in it, but they're also going to be in tough. The Sharks are not a team to take lightly. We'll see if they can help the other teams in the Eastern race tonight or what have you, but the Rangers could end up in a wild card spot if they pick up points against the Sharks tonight. But again, it's going to be tough for them to hold that down where they've got a couple extra games played. So for right now, Ottawa's 8 points clear of the next closest team in the wild card race, but wild card 2 spot still very much extremely tight, between the Blue Jackets, the Canadiens, the Rangers, the Islanders, and if Detroit is playing Boston tonight, that game still, I believe after 2 periods, it was 2-1 Detroit. If the Red Wings win, they'll be kind of right back into that mixed with 74 points too. They'll still kind of be in that conversation. There's, like I said, 4 or 5 teams going for that last spot. Who wants it? It seems like they all kind of win and lose together lately, so we'll see what happens. As I mentioned, a bunch of signings today, some more key players, mostly off on the University of Minnesota after being eliminated and having their season finished. Some key guys joining the pro ranks here. The Blackhawks signed 2 key prospects. The Blackhawks today announced they've signed Oliver Moore and Sam Rinzel. Rinzel's, of course, big defenseman, 6'4", University of Minnesota, was a 2022 first-round pick, 25th overall. Projects to be a real high-end defenseman. Some think he could be a top-pair guy, of course, U.S.-born player. So we'll see, but he's got his pro contract signed. Same with Moore, who was a first-rounder in 2023. 19th overall, of course, also a teammate of Rinzel at the University of Minnesota. He's a little smaller, 5'11", 194. But you throw those 2 guys in the mix with the other guys the Blackhawks have. Those are 2 very much key prospects. Levashunov's been getting a look here late in the season. And, of course, you got Bedard and a few others already on the main roster there. So things are going to get better in Chicago, and they need to insulate some of these kids with some good, solid veterans next year, and they can take a step forward. At least you would think so. We also got a signing today in Nashville. Matthew Wood, of course, another real good college player who was a 2023 first-rounder, 15th overall to Nashville, gets his 3-year ELC. Again, Wood was teammates with Moore and Rinzel at the University of Minnesota. Wood, 6'5", 205 pounds, with really good speed. So could be an interesting player for Nashville here down the stretch. And the Calgary Flames have signed Jacob Battaglia, who is a 2024 second-rounder, gets his 3-year ELC here as well. A bunch of injury updates. Leon Draisaitl back in tonight for the Edmonton Oilers. So, of course, like I said, they're doing Battle of the Flames, the Battle of Alberta tonight. Leon has been missing for a while. McDavid's still going to be out a little while longer. The Oilers have had their fair share of struggles with their 2 superstars out of the lineup, so that's going to be a massive addition for them. And in Calgary, a big update on Connor Zary. Some thought his season could be over. They're calling him week to week right now. Re-injured his knee after Mikko Rantanen, of course, who Rantanen himself actually have done damage to both the Alberta teams here as the Stars went through the province, taking out Zary and then having that knee to the head of Stuart Skinner. I don't think either were dirty plays, just unfortunate accidents, but certainly damage nonetheless, right? Doesn't matter if there was intent or not. The fact is 2 players are injured, and, both fairly significant ones at that. Winnipeg, Gabe Vilardi, of course, we know already was hurt and is considered week to week, but there's some updates from the Jets today indicating that he's going to be out a while. I know they said week to week, but there's some that are seriously concerned that his season might be over, or at the very least his regular season, and that even if they might have to go on a deeper playoff run for have a chance for him to come back. I mean, this is going to be a massive loss. Vilardi has been a significant part of their top 6 on their top line. If he is going to be unavailable to start the playoffs, not saying they can't win without him. They've been having a phenomenal year, but he's just such a big piece there. So certainly a player that you certainly want to keep your eye on. But they said he's a ways away from even getting back in the gym or getting on the ice. So that's not good. Not good at all for Vilardi. We also got bad news in Pittsburgh. Boko Imama, who was getting the biggest, longest look and most playing time of his NHL career with Pittsburgh, is done for the year. He needs to have surgery on an injured bicep, and he's looking at approximately a 6-month recovery. Of course, Imama's bounced around with a few teams. He used to be with the before Utah moved to, they were the Coyotes, of course. He was in the Coyotes organization. He was in the LA Kings organization, spent a couple of years with the Senators, and now he's in Pittsburgh. He's had NHL games here and there, but never really got an extended look with more of a role, and he was starting to get that. Of course, the Penguins this year, they know they're out of the playoffs and are certainly, kind of just giving some players more of a look just to kind of see what they have for the future. And he was getting a chance to play more and doing well, probably playing some of his better hockey, and then this happened. So it's a very unfortunate situation for Imama, but he should be good to go for next season. And in New Jersey, another quick update as well. We know Jack Hughes and Dougie Hamilton are out long-term, and the latest from the team reporters say that there's pretty much no chance either guy can come back, even if the Devils were to go all the way to the Stanley Cup final, that it's most likely going to be a scenario that they don't see either guy have any chance to play until at least September. So terrible news there as well. Now, as I mentioned, an interesting story I found earlier, which was actually discussed on the Thursday night broadcast on Amazon Prime on Coast to Coast with Andy Petrillo and NHL Network studio analyst Mike Kelly, who likes to focus on a lot of the analytics and a lot of the underlying numbers, took a little bit of a deep dive on Leafs captain and superstar player Auston Matthews. We know Matthews is a phenomenal talent, often rated at the top of the league in goals, and we know this year has not quite been his season. Now, the Leafs are still having a real good year after they actually won tonight in LA, which is a real tough thing to do this season. The Kings have had the best home ice record across the NHL, and the Leafs went down and scored 3 third-period goals for a 3-1 victory, including Matthews, who's got himself a shorthanded tally tonight. But overall, Matthews is scoring at the lowest rate of his career. Now, most guys would still love to score at the rate that he's at, so I'm not saying it's bad. It's just bad for him. And it's not really even that terrible, really. But when you look at this, guy and how talented and how skilled he's been, able to hit 60-plus goals, 50 goals, 40 goals, and he's obviously missed time this year. We don't know the exact details of the injury, but we know he's dealing with something, went to Germany, all that stuff. And, well, clearly, whatever, there's something bugging him. There's no doubt. But according to Kelly's deep dive digging here on all the analytical data and things we have through NHL Edge, a couple of things that he found was that he's still getting the same, he's still shooting at a similar rate. He's still getting the prime grade A opportunities at similar rate as years past. But one thing he's noticed is his shot velocity is down about an average of 10 miles an hour, and his accuracy is down as well. So his ability to pick the corner. So obviously goalies are stopping him at a higher rate. So clearly he's just not able to quite pinpoint that shot with as much, obviously aim and velocity on it to make it go in. So we know that it's likely some sort of wrist injury, which has been speculated. That's got to be the case, right? So you just got to wonder, is this going to impact the team to the point in the playoffs? Because, you can say what you want about this team. They have lots of things to be positive about going into the playoffs. Lots of things have been going well for them this year, right? They have a different look team. We have a very different looking blue line than we've seen in the past. We have a good goaltending tandem. The top forward guys are still the same top forward guys that have been there a while, mixed in with some different depth players. But the problem here that they've run into at a high level for most of their playoff failures have been the fact that their top guys can't seem to get enough scoring in the playoffs. It gets, we know that time and space gets even more limited out there, tighter checking, and they've struggled. Especially as series get later and the games get more important. You look at, some people say Mitch Marner is non-playoff performer, but then you'll get an argument saying, well, look at his numbers, they're actually not that bad. Right. But if you break it down per game, he tends to do better earlier in the series. When you get to like game 6, game 7, that's when some of the stuff has disappeared from some of their top guys. So if Matthews is not scoring at a rate now, should fans be concerned he's going to struggle in the playoffs when it's even tighter? Like I said, it's not that he's not scoring. This is a crazy conversation for most players. Most, like I said, 90% of the league would love to score at this pace. But when you're a guy who's, in the past shown you can be a 60-plus goal man and you're scoring at a pace to barely hit 40, that's a big difference. His mid-range goals are down from 22 to 5. So that's a big difference. So clearly, he can't rely on his shot like he used to. He's getting more different types of goals this year when he is scoring. So, more goals with the dekes and then close and that type of thing. So obviously, Kelly kind of chalked it up to being a combination of injury, fatigue, went to Four Nations. Obviously, that took a lot of energy. Some guys came back from Four Nations and absolutely accelerated, and others hit a wall because of the amount of energy they had to output. Look at McDavid when he first came back. He was terrible for like half dozen games or more. He eventually got hurt, but he struggled hardcore, but he was excellent in Four Nations. He was, arguably Canada's top player, scored the the golden goal, right? But it's something that it's had different impact on different types of players. So from the Leafs perspective, I think overall, like I said, their team, as much as there's lots to be positive about, I am concerned for them from this perspective for the playoffs, because scoring has been their issue in the power play, in the top guys, getting it done in the biggest games when it matters most. So we will have to monitor this situation for sure. We probably won't learn much about it, even when seasons end. Matthews has become incredibly private and secretive when it comes to injuries, doesn't want anybody to know anything. So I'm not sure if we'll ever really, truly find out. On the rumor mill, let's take a look at some things we might see here in the offseason. Came across an article today suggesting that we could see a trade between Boston and Philly, trading defensemen who they felt might not be best suited for each other's club. And one, the Bruins might be regretting signing Nikita Zadorov to that big-ticket deal. It suggested a Nikita Zadorov for a Cam York type of trade, and it's like, okay, to me that's interesting. For one, Zadorov could be a flyer all day long. If you think about how they, historically speaking, the Flyers like to play, I can see how they like his big, heavy game, but you have to be best, situated in the lineup for him to be effective. To me, he's a third pair defenseman. He's not paid that way, though, so you need to try to play him more, which is what he's running into in Boston. Plus, the Bruins have had a lot of injuries with McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm. He's getting a bigger role, more ice time than he probably can handle, and he's not really living up to the hype. For what he got paid, it's proven to be, or looks to be at this point, a problematic contract. Cam York obviously is a much younger defenseman. Obviously, we know he got punished. Was sat in a game here the other night, even though he sat the whole game, the entire game, as a dressed defenseman, because the Flyers did not have another defenseman they could put in the lineup. You can't deliberately play short and get an emergency recall or anything. They had no choice but to dress him, but then they chose not to give him a shift in the entire game. And we then learned, of course, about the verbal altercation with head coach John Tortorella, which was happened right before his dismissal. So, York has been a player who's been kind of polarizing in Philly, up and down. I wouldn't be shocked if they moved him, to be honest. And obviously, Zadorov is a completely different type of defenseman. But again, he's an older defenseman with a big ticket contract. Is that something the Flyers are going to want? I can see the Flyers liking the player, but I would be careful with that. To me, I think he's greatly overpaid. I think the Bruins made a mistake. They wouldn't shock me if they try to undo that mistake this offseason, but I don't know that you're going to get a good young defenseman like Cam York out of another team to make that mistake go away. But that's just my take on that. But will the Bruins trade Zadorov this summer? Wouldn't shock me. Vancouver, Thatcher Demko. Rumor has it that he's going to be, obviously we know he's looking for a new contract on an extension this offseason. Of course, his injuries could likely play a big role in what happens. But word on the street is that he's going to be looking for a similar contract that we saw the Senators extend Linus Ullmark after acquiring him from the Boston Bruins this past offseason. Of course, early in the season, Ullmark and the Sens agreed to a 4-year pact at $8.25 million per season. Basically, after Swayman held out and made the Bruins give him the big bucks, Ullmark got the same contract, except shorter term where he's a bit older. So Swayman got the 8-year deal, Ullmark got the 4-year deal. Demko is, I guess, closer in age with Ullmark, but still, the 4-year deal for a guy who's missed so much time with injuries, and you do wonder about his future, especially with that knee. Is he worth the money? Is he worth $8 million? If he can be healthy and play to his abilities, yes, he absolutely is. I would say I would take Demko and Ullmark are probably very comparable goalies in a lot of ways, except Demko misses way too much time. So that's a tricky one. So I can see why there's concern and there's doubt over his future in Vancouver. Obviously, we know that they have Kevin Lankinen, who was amazing early on, was arguably you could call him their MVP, you could call him their most underrated player, you could say an unsung hero, whatever you want to call him. He was their guy. But he has struggled mightily lately. And if you go into next year with no Demko, and Lankinen's the guy, and this happens again, you might be screwed. Artur Shilovs is not necessarily proven this year that he's ready for full-time action. I don't know. It's risky. I understand you feel like you can't trust Demko because of his health. and there's a possibility that they move on from him because of all those injuries, and I get it. Demko might not get 4 years from anybody, so he might be hard-pressed to, really command a trade. I don't know. The Canucks also had made it known from comments from Patrick Allvin that they felt comfortable with the Lankinen contract that they could retain Demko, but he's only got 1 year left. So, I don't know. Maybe they ride things out. Maybe they don't rush to decisions. But between the two contracts, it has raised a lot of eyebrows when Lankinen got that extension that it probably means the end of the road for Demko as a Canuck. And if it does, I wonder where obviously they can trade him. They don't necessarily have to have a team agree to an extension. But I wonder if Demko will get that extension without putting up a good season of being able to stay healthy. So we'll see what happens. But Demko's future in Vancouver is certainly cloudy at best. And staying with Vancouver for a second, a lot of talk lately about head coach Rick Tocchet, whether or not he'll be back in Vancouver. Of course, we knew when Philadelphia fired John Tortorella the other day, immediate reaction was Tocchet could be the next guy there. And maybe he is, but with all the talk saying that we know that Tocchet's contract is sort of on an expiry, but there is a year left with a club option. So, but all the other reporters that we've heard talk about this here in recent weeks and months say that the odds are that the team and the coach, Tocchet himself, would want to have an extension worked out for at least a couple more years before he would go into next year as a head coach to make sure he's not going in on as a lame duck on a final year. Well, Thomas Drance now of the Athletic kind of has something different to say in his latest article discussing the scenario. Says that he believes that Tocchet won't be the next head coach of the Flyers because he's not going to be available, that the Canucks are going to exercise that contract to make him the head coach next year and he'll be a part of the team. So I'm like, okay, well, even if I have no doubt they see him as being the coach and don't necessarily want him to leave. That wasn't really part of it. It was more so, does Tocchet want to stay? And we know that the team has been through a lot this year. A lot of ups and downs with injuries, a lot of ups and downs with drama in the locker room, trades that they didn't probably see themselves having to make and all that. And it's been a challenging year to say the least. And he's made it known that it's been exhausting. And does he want to come back and coach this team? That's really the big thing. It's going to be on Tocchet. If he doesn't really want to be in that scenario anymore and decides that he wants to move on, I don't see Vancouver initiating that club option to force him to stay there. He's got a good relationship with all of the management, and I think that they wouldn't do that to him. So I kind of disagree with Drance's article, but it's nice to see in a way that right now, he firmly believes that Tocchet will be the coach next year. So we'll have to monitor that situation here as well. And in Montreal, lots of chatter, but mostly on the fan base, around which veterans stay and which veterans go. We know Ken Hughes has made it clear that they're probably going to have some of the veterans not return next year, that they need to turn over the roster. They need to create room for some of the younger players. At the same time, they need to be insulated with some veteran guys, and that really their play down the stretch is probably going to largely dictate who might stay and who might go. According to the fan base, it's the changes should be happening on the blue line, not so much in the forward group. I think a lot of people are quite pleased with the play of guys like Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher. They've both been really good for Montreal, scoring some big goals and putting in solid efforts here down the stretch. As much as the team's been on a bit of a losing skid here lately, those two guys have been good, but they've noticed a ton of struggles on the back end, specifically with veteran David Savard. And you can make that argument about Mike Matheson as well. I know there's something Matheson was actually, only been bad a little bit. But if you look back to last year, his numbers, giveaways and stuff were not great. There was lots of positives and things that he did well, sure. But it's one of those players that you got to take the good with the bad, or you're not going to like the player. Because it's a risk-reward type of relationship that Matheson has with his ability to jump into the rush, generate offense, but it leaves the team at risk defensively to make that happen. So, right now it seems like the more likelihood is we're going to see the veteran defenseman maybe not return, whereas, we would have thought maybe there was a chance Gallagher might go, but they need some veteran guys. He's a heart and soul kind of player. He's playing more like that this year. Looks as good as he's been in a few years, really. So I do think that the odds of Gallagher staying and Josh Anderson as well are pretty good. I mean, I would think that with Evans re-signed, that there's a chance Armia doesn't come back. And like I said, with Savard, there's a chance he doesn't come back. And I do wonder if they would trade Matheson. Clearly, Lane Hudson has emerged as being the top power play guy and the top offensive defenseman on that team. You know, they can certainly benefit from having the smooth skating Matheson maybe play lower in the lineup. But I don't know. I can't say with certainty that Matheson won't be back. But if they're going to make a move and move on from some veteran guys, it's not the way they played lately. It's likely not going to be in the forward group. It'll be on the back end. So let me know what you think on Montreal's veterans down in the comments. We'll discuss further. Of course, let me know your thoughts and everything else discussed here in today's video as well. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.